Okay, so today I want to go over your interfaces, interface files, things like that. Interfaces are huge. They can make things that used to be literally just nightmares into trivial fixes. And so, what an interface is it's a way to describe what your data looks like. Some people call it the shape of your data. Um, in this example of this application that I built, this MVP application, I have a list of every team in the NFL and then how many yards that team gained in the year of 2022. So now you get a lot of understanding if you look at this piece. You know that we have this FB data that's a team name and a total yards. So let's say, someone from the back end calls you up and they say, hey, can we change that from yards to yardage for whatever reason? And for some reason you want to keep the back end and front end in sync, which, is not uncommon at all. Um, you might go in here and say yardage, and then you hit save, and voila, you have this broken compile process, and it actually gives you a list of everything that's broken. So now you can just hold the control button down and click on this, and it'll literally take you to it. And you look at this and you say, oh, okay, that needs to be yardage. And hit save. And then scroll down, and then now we have another one on line 33 of FB chart component. So hold the control button, click that, and yardage. And then you can actually see here that there's a couple more red spots. So, it might be easier just to go to these, just scroll over to them and scroll to the next one. And voila, we are compiling again. Now this is going to be broken because it is actually yards. So, let's see, is this compiled? Compiled. And reload. And that's weird. So weird. Reload. So why did that work? Why do you even work, bro? Yardage. Get chart data, raw data. Total yards, parse B, total yards. Oh, okay, well, that makes sense because this is still total yards. Oh man, and that actually brings up a great point that I didn't even think of before. In this example, the interface that goes straight to the back end, which is from our CSV, is still total yards. But now this changed to yardage over here. So the UI, the interface between the UI and the chart and the data has now been adapted for yardage. So that's actually pretty cool. I was actually expecting this to break. So anyways, that is the benefit. So that is the truth right there. But this sort of really um, awesome thing that TypeScript giveth, TypeScript can taketh away as well. And the first reason is because, like, while this is great for a individual project that we might be working on, this is not great if you end up with hundreds or thousands, dozens or hundreds or thousands of interfaces, because it's just not feasible to keep hundreds of or thousands of lines of code in your app component. Okay, so that it just will get totally out of out of control and very, very difficult to deal with for a couple reasons. One reason it'll be difficult to deal with is because um, everybody literally, like if let's say you had dozens of programmers on 2 or 3 teams, and this would be one file that probably every single user, every single developer would need to update every single time, and that would be that would lead to a lot of confusion, and very, very difficult to decode, um, very, very difficult to understand Git collisions, um, as we all make little tweaks to this in work that we're actively working on. So that's the first reason. Or there's first two reasons, and so the solution to the first reason is to create a specific file, and even better, a specific folder for interfaces. So that's what I'm going to do right now. New folder, and I'm just going to call it interfaces. I guess I already had an interfaces folder from a previous attempt at this video. And then within that, we're going to create a new file. And that would be, you would quite often call it index.ts. And this is sort of like through the tradition of software development, this index is sort of the holder of everything about this folder. So now in this index.ts file, we could move our interfaces over. So I'm just going to do that, Control X, boom. Let me clean that up a little bit while I'm in here. Now we come over here and Control V. So we move this, and this is sort of kind of thing that, just a behavior that, like, I remember when I first started in software development or JavaScript development, was just nightmare scenario. You move a file, and now like everything's broken, and a lot of the broken things are hidden and difficult to find, especially if there's like dynamic code. Angular makes it so easy in this scenario, because now it's like, I don't know what FB date is, and so we get this error in our compiler, and then we can click this button, the control in this, and it'll take us straight to the error, and then it'll even suggest a solution. It's like, hey, would you like to import that from interfaces? So this used to be just to kind of try to get the context right here. This file used to be in this interface used to be in this file, and I've moved it out of this file, and now I have an error, and now it suggested a fix for it. And I click on the next one, and it suggests a fix for it, and we're good, right? And so, it's like, call it a day. Well, no, not quite, because we still have issues in our chart component. So it found that something's wrong in chart component, so we can click this, and it's like right off the top complaining that this FB data is not here. So the easiest way to fix this with this tool is just to delete this import, and then mouse over this, and then it'll recalculate, quite often, not always, but it'll quite often recalculate the location, and voila, we're fixed. So that is one thing you can do. Now, just as a side note, another really anti-pattern that can really cause your life to be, and your life of your fellow developers, is duplicate typings. So if you take this interface and let's say you made a copy of this interface in multiple places, so let's say you had one at the bottom of @ component and at the bottom of FB chart component, that is just an absolute nightmare, because if you change it in one, there's nothing to protect you or to remind you to update it in the other. Um, but anyway, so this is a good start, right? So now, and you'll see this a lot. Like if you go to places, you'll see that they have an interfaces folder and or an interfaces file, and then they'll have your interfaces in there, and that's a pretty good solution. But it also becomes a nightmare. It solves the first problem with, hey, we don't have our app component TypeScript becoming 10,000 lines long. But it doesn't solve the second issue, which was Git conflicts. Um, because still, this was in this file, you're literally going to come in here every single time and update. Every single developer is going to be coming in as maybe at the beginning of their software development process and updating this file and then trying to merge it in the day before the demo in 2 weeks. And then, it's just a nightmare scenario. So one thing that you could do to avoid that would be to create multiple files for different types of interfaces. So this is and that can actually be even better from like being able to understand what's going on. So this FB raw data interface is the shape of the data when it comes from the call, the network call. So we could call these like, we could create a new folder, a new file. It could say something like raw.ts. And so this is where all of our raw, or let's just say, raw. I'll probably come up with a better name sometime in the future. But anyways, so I'm going to take this raw interface, I'm going to move it into my raw TypeScript file, and I'm going to hit save, and then we're going to have a compilation error because I need to save this guy too, because you can no longer find that in there. And so we have a couple choices here. We could change like everybody. We could go here and we could change this. Let me hit control and that. We could change this to import from our new file, but probably in all likelihood a better way for you to do this. It's not 100%, like sometimes it's not the best way to do it, but in most cases the best way to do this would be just to say import raw FB data from raw, and then export raw data. Yeah, actually, no, that is what we want, raw data, like that. That's weird. So weird. Let's see. Export raw data. Okay, so now we're back to where we were, and we have this. And now let's say this one is FB data, which is clearly now in too vague, right? This really is it's not our football data, it's our total yards data. So we could create a file, and we could just say ty.ts, and then we could take our total yards interface here. We can move it over into our ty, hit save, and then we go back over here and fix this thing. And then we can just export it exactly like we did before. And that's pretty awesome. And now in the future, if we want to make something for a change that's for total yards specifically, then we can just go to the total yards data. And then if I'm working and then somebody on another team makes a change to the same file, that's sort of a heads up to me that, hey, we are like working on the exact same stuff. We need to get together and figure out if we're stepping on each other, if there's some sort of mistake made, and we need to figure it out. But like, let's say, like if you look at our raw data, let's say we wanted to make a games played folder component as well, um, then whoever the other person would maybe create a gp.ts and put their index in there and then put it in this file. Yeah, actually, so you might hear the phrase rollup file, and this is an example of a rollup file. Um, the It's an index.ts file. As far as I know, rollup files are always called index.ts, and then they absorb everything that's beneath them, right? So this one, or they consume everything that's beneath them, and then, or that's within the same folder or in child folders, and then um, everything, and then it comes out. Now, that used to be considered a best practice in Angular. And my understanding it is no longer, as of like maybe Angular 7, it was no longer a best practice, but it's not considered a bad practice either. They're neutral on this. But that kind of sums it up. One last thing I would like to say is that it's as your project scales up, it makes a lot of sense to maybe instead of having files here, so like if your file count here gets above like 7, you should start considering um, creating additional folders and then pulling them in that way. And if it gets above 10, then you absolutely should do that. And then you shouldn't really let your folder count ever really get above 10 either. So, but that gives you a good way to divide everything up in such a way that you don't step all over each other on every sprint and have sort of a guaranteed collision at the day before demo day. Um, and I'm not saying that's the ideal, like the fact that everybody's committing everything the day before a demo is ideal, but that's just the practical reality of things. So the one last thing I'm going to do here is just go over. So we imported our interfaces. I always do this, and then we deleted these interfaces. That makes sense to me. That was the intention. So here we just imported from the new place, and we didn't have to make any changes. After that, that's a good thing. This is our rollup folder file that has all of our TypeScripts imported into it, and these are our two different types of TypeScripts. So at this point, it makes a lot of sense to commit this, and we want to commit everything, so we don't have any weird changes to packages or other build sort of changes that we did temporarily just for working. So we'll add that. Git status. Okay, git commit -m. So as far as committing goes, generally, I try to put something so that whenever it's easy for me when I'm debugging in the future to figure out where things likely broke. That's usually the main thing I'm trying to do. And also I'm kind of trying to create like a little Wikipedia for other developers so that if they're trying to find something where something has happened, they can look through the comments and be able to figure out, oh, okay, I need to move something or I need to do something, so this is probably a good example. So moves, types, interfaces into their own files and directory. So like let's say in our app the color is wrong or something. You look at that commit, you know that moving the interfaces into their file own directory is very unlikely going to be the reason that that happened. So it just makes things happen. But then, like, let's say you're a developer and you're like, man, how do I move interfaces into their own files and directories? Well, you look at the commit history and you see that. Anyways, I hope that helps. I know it'll help me in the future when I go back to review this, because I just can't remember everything all the time. So this would be a good little refresher for me. If it helps somebody else, that much better. Happy coding, make some money, have fun. Bye.